Hey everybody, welcome to the High Quality Fun podcast. Since it's one of the first episodes, I want to kind of explain what the premise is behind this deal, and I hope you guys like it. I have a guest here that I'll introduce here shortly, but the point of the High Quality Fun podcast and brand is we want to bring on people and share stories that we consider high quality. I got this idea somewhere. All my friends seem to like it. And the premise behind it is that there are people that go and do these adventures that they know are going to be hard. They know there's going to be struggles. They know they're going to be in crappy situations, and they do it anyways, because when you come back, these are the things that you're going to talk about for years and years and years. And they're going to kind of, define the things that you tell people. And then there's like low quality fun, which is things like you go to Cedar Point, right? It's a great time. You go there, have a good time. But after that weekend, after you tell people what you did that one weekend, you never really talk about it again. So we want to hear these stories where, people went through some stuff and signed up for some crap, and they came out on the other side a bigger and better person. So that's the premise behind it. Our first guest is Joey. Joey, how you doing? I'm excited to have you here.
I'm very excited to be here, man. I'm doing well tonight.
I love it. Joey and I used to both work together at Ford. We roomed together for a while. He actually lived with my wife and I before we were married. And the story we're going to kind of dive into is when he decided to go back to school for his master's, he decided to move from Michigan back to over out to Denver. And instead of just flying out there, driving out there, he opted to essentially camp for a month and drive out there with his dog. And so
2.5 months.
1.5 months?
2.5 months.
2.5 months. Okay. Okay. It's been a while since we talked about that. What did you say? It was 5 years ago?
5 years.
So, I mean, before we get started, is there anything you want to tell about yourself? Otherwise, we can kind of jump right into it.
Let's just dive in.
Okay. Yeah, so I remember you were talking about this. You were kind of getting burnt out on Ford, I think, and you just had this idea, like, I think I'm gonna go back to grad school. I mean, that's kind of what kicked off this idea, right?
Yeah. I have found in my life that I go through about 4-year cycles where I need to make big dramatic changes. And sure thing, about year 3 and Ford, I was getting bored and finding new interests in the world, and I was just like, I need to go back, I need to switch up. So I looked for a master's program that made a fit for me, and I knew I had to do something big in between my life change. This wasn't a short-term leaving Detroit. It was going to be something that was forever, and so I wanted to make it memorable, and that's this trip.
Yeah, I know you were looking at like a lot of different colleges around the world. You ended up settling on Denver. And was it always your intention to turn this into a big trip, or did that kind of come after you decided to go to grad school there?
I don't think I really knew until the last few months. I think you knew that. You experienced that. Everything was kind of just coming together very last minute. I had to take the GRE at the very closing week, I believe. It was the very last week you were able to even take it to be able to test in for the next fall. And then within the next couple of months, I was just like, okay, how do I get over there? And the camping trip was born.
Yeah, I remember when you got accepted and decided you were going out there and you decided you were going to do this, your original goal was to build a teardrop camper. And I was like, all right, that sounds like a ton of work. Good for you. We live in the same house. I'm happy to help with whatever you need. And how'd that go for you, Joey?
Not well. What I've learned immediately was that those things are actually quite expensive. I kind of figured I'd buy a shell and it would be $1,000 or $2,000, and it was more along the lines of 7, 8. And electrical still would have had to been built out and everything. And so I had to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I kind of remember, like, I don't know, it was like 2 months till you had to leave. It was 1 month till you had to leave. I'm like, Joey,
Yeah.
you've been planning this build forever, but you haven't actually started something. How easy do you think this is going to be? And then I kind of proposed to you, why don't you just buy a snowmobile trailer and, you know, set that up, live in that for your trip as you moved out there. You had a Jeep that you towed it with, and yeah, I mean, you spent a bunch of time looking for trailers with some success until you finally came across one.
Yeah. The first one I bought was a used one that I'll not talk about how much I actually spent on it. And it was full rusty. I was just too excited. I was jumping and I was young, and I bought it, dragged it home, and immediately called you, I think. And I was like, I made a mistake.
I think I messed up.
And that guy just
Wouldn't
had
take it
to
back.
kick the bucket. There's no way I was getting any worse out of that thing. So unfortunately took a huge loss right at the beginning. But luckily figured out that you were right. Those type of trailers in Michigan were not that expensive, and I could afford one new, kind of in the budget that I was looking at. So that pretty much worked out pretty well. And I do think I was trying to remember how early I actually bought it, and I'm pretty sure it was about 3 weeks before I was leaving. I actually got a trailer that was worth a damn.
Yeah, you were definitely on crunch time, but I know that right when you brought it home, you started, you know, working on it, packing. Do you want to kind of go into the planning phase and what you actually implemented into this camper?
Yeah, I mean, this guy was bare bones. It was a 5x10 not teardrop, 5x10 trailer, haul behind, all enclosed. Basically, the only thing I wanted to do was create a shelf that I could put a cot. I went and bought the bougiest cot I could get at REI. And then I built a shelf so I could put it on top, and I could store some storage bins under it. And then I cut out a hole on top, put in a fan that was tied to a real cheapo solar panel, so that fan would just run and clear out some of the stank during the day. And in the front, I put in a hitch rack.
Basket.
Yeah, and I just kind of bolted it to the front so that I just had a little extra storage at the front, and I was carrying a spare tire, and I want to say an extra cooler up there. And then I had a double hitch rack, and so I could carry my bike on a bike rack, as well as pull the trailer behind my Jeep. It actually turned out a pretty sweet little rig. Oh, I did also get kind of a really cheap extendo poles that I put a tarp on, so I would have a little bit of a cover whenever I was just stable.
Yeah, and this trailer it's like for a single snowmobile, you drop the ramp down. We'll post some photos either on the website or on the Instagram account, but it's so you could just literally drive up the door into the back. Didn't you also get like a screen that you put on the back?
I did, yeah. And there was just like a bug screen that I could
It's like a magnet spring.
Leave it open and not be attacked by bugs, which turns out to be a very good idea, especially in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Did you put any lights or anything in there?
I had just a little cheap battery powered light up top that I think I ended up replacing a few times, but it was just enough to give me index enough light to, do your things at night to get ready for bed.
Dex was the pup that was brought along for the ride. What was that? There was something else I was going to bring up. Oh yeah, so you prepped this thing for the trip, and then I'd never seen these before. I'm sure everybody listening has at this point, but you got one of those pod containers, and we lived in like not so much a city, but we definitely had like a wicked short driveway. And so one day we just come home and there's this big old pod storage unit sitting in our driveway, and yeah, he threw his life in that thing, strapped it all down, and then what they do is they just pick it up, store it for a while, and then on whatever date he sets, they just drop it off at his new location in Denver. and he can unpack it and go from there. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. So when you started, like, did you have a whole route planned out? Like, what went into that route, or did you kind of just wing it once you left the driveway?
I had some very basics planned out. I knew I wanted to go up and I wanted to trace Lake Superior along the Upper Peninsula and into Minnesota. And then I figured I would basically just cut through all of the Central America because I didn't know that anything existed up there. I'm from Texas, so I didn't know anything about the North before I moved up there. And then I wanted to hit a lot of Montana because I had seen Glacier National Park a fair amount and through pictures. And I was going to come down through Utah and then come back from the west side of Colorado for the last bit and then arrive in Denver. And I had taken off from basically June 1st until I think I started school, I want to say August 20th or so. So I had a little over 2 months to go and figure, just play around, figure my life out.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just like go into it. Tell us how the trip started. Ramble a little bit. I'll cut you off if there's anything I want to pull on, or if there's any particular high quality fun story about how something went wrong. Like, we definitely want to pull on that a bit.
I might
We're not here to hear your fun. We want to know how you struggled.
Yeah. I might actually start with the couple days before I left. There's a wonderful festival in Detroit called Movement Festival, which we all love. It's through 3 days through Labor Day, and it's just full boots and cats the whole time.
Boots and cats, house music.
And I wanted to do a big hurrah right before I left. I knew I was leaving literally the day after that weekend on June 1st, but I wasn't going to miss it. And we had gone a couple years, and I was like, we're just going to go after parties. We're going to start midnight 1, and we're going to go until probably 8 every day. And so for the last 3 days, and keep in mind, I am still packing, and I think the pod was in the middle of that. I'm going all night to these warehouse parties, and then I would come home, I'd crash for like 5 hours, and then I'd get up and I'd pack all day. It was truthfully miserable. I mean, it was a blast, but it was like, I'm gonna throw all my shit away. Somehow made it. Somehow pulled it off. Took off the morning of June 1st, and I basically just beelined right up to Upper Peninsula. I remember hitting the Mackinac Bridge and being like, oh shit, like I'm actually doing this. And it was a little freaky because it was me and my dog, and I had very few human interactions planned for those next couple months, and I didn't know what it was going to be like. I'm a very extroverted person, so I figured I'd be fine, but I'd never done anything like this, so it was pretty exquisite. I shot right up to the coast. Some of y'all may be familiar with Pictured Rocks National Park. If you don't go there because it's blissfully quiet.
We were actually just there like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, nice. It is gorgeous.
Yeah, I love it up there. Much different with two.
Yeah, I can imagine. Started up there actually with a couple friends for the weekend. They came up there, and it kind of felt like a send-off hurrah. Did some fun things. Got to really shake out the trailer for the first few times. Actually, looking back at pictures, I had nothing packed or really laid out in any way when I left because I just kind of crammed everything in there. I was like, all right, we'll figure it out when we get. And so the first weekend was a good shakedown. It was basically just figuring out if this trailer was even going to work. How do I want to lay it out? Is it comfortable? Can I make it comfortable? It's cool trumping around there. I think the next significant event was a weekend. I have a picture. I was keeping a journal because I was like, this is going to be something I want to be able to read back upon. And I have a picture where I'm on top of it was an overlook up in, I want to say Manatee area. I can't remember where I was exactly. And it's just a picture of my journal, and it just says, "We've officially had a week." And there's a sunset behind it, and I remember feeling so fucking free. I was like, "Damn, thank God!" Like everything that I had been fighting for, everything that I was trying to do, we're here. We've made it.
Were
Shit.
you were pretty much camping like every single time, right? So you didn't stay in like any hotels during all this trip, did you?
I think during the entire 2.5 months, I did a cumulative week in hotels.
Okay, just recharging and everything.
Yeah.
And then was it
There was a
all
couple times I didn't have a shower, so it was like a couple times I was like, all right, this bag shower or like river showers are getting kind of old. Like, let's buy a motel.
did
Get a
you do
real bed.
mostly rustic camping, or was it like a combination of that and actual campgrounds?
It was, man, I want to say 80-90% BLM land. Just
Okay,
just
that's
out
really
rustic.
roughing it.
Yeah. I didn't really want to pay anything. The whole goal was to keep it as cheap as possible. I already drive a Jeep, so the gas was going to be incredibly expensive. Uh, but yeah, we just out in the middle of nowhere. I just kind of post up. Basically, I developed, and I'd say this took me about 3 weeks before I was like in the groove, because it was kind of stressful at first. I didn't really have a rhythm to the whole thing. But I developed kind of a formula where I would drive. When I would try to never drive more than 8 hours in a day. So if I was going to a next destination, I'd try to make it reasonably close. I'd drive to the nearest city. I'd get in the coffee shop. I'd sit there and I'd say, okay, what kind of hikes do I want to do? What kind of biking do I want to do? What am I trying to check out, etc. And then I'd look for BLM land around there, and then I would just hike out to that fucking spot and just hope there was a spot to place my trailer. And surprisingly, most of the time it worked. I was always nervous in that last. It's like once you're driving, you're fine, and it's like those last couple miles on like dirt road that you're like, man, I hope there's campsites where they say there's campsites.
Were you using like I'm trying to remember what the websites are, but we did a big truck camping trip. We didn't have a trailer, so the trailer adds a whole new dynamic to it because you can't turn around or anything. And yeah, like I'd be driving, Chelsea would literally pull up the website and find just people recommending campsites, like BLM campsites.
Freecampsites.net.
Okay. Yeah,
At
so we
least
use the
that's the
same
one I
thing.
use. Yeah.
Super awesome. If you guys ever get the chance, like check it out. It's very resourceful. It looks super janky, but it's legit.
Yeah. And then there's of course just going and asking the locals. You just go and strike up conversation. Eventually, on a trip like this, you get pretty needy for human attention, and so you start striking up conversations with everyone. And
it's something that's so interesting. Like everyone's always willing to help too.
Oh, of course. They're like, oh, you want to learn about our area? They're like, of course. Here's what I love to do. Here's the most beautiful places, and you find some true gems just going and asking people.
Did you I feel like I went to school up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I'm sure I gave you a bunch of recommendations up there. I just don't remember where you stopped at.
I did go up, so I went all the way up the thumb to the
Copper Harbor.
Copper Harbor. That's I got the first thing that always pops into my head when I think about that area is it's the buggiest place I think I've ever been. even worse than Houston, Texas, which is pretty astounding. However, it's also the location, maybe tied for southern Utah, that has the most beautiful stars of anywhere I've ever been. Actually, one of my favorite stories of that trip pops into my head. I woke up one night in the middle of the night, probably like 2-3 a.m., just kind of restless, couldn't go to sleep. So I drove out to a local point. I can't remember what the beach is called, but you have to hike out to it. It's about a mile hike. It's nothing crazy. And so just me and my dog, and I grabbed my big old blanket because it was pretty cold still. It was early June. And we hiked out and basically sat there, and I saw the most incredible stars I've ever seen. I remember stepping out because you're hiking up kind of in forest, and then you step out to the beach. And I remember seeing the stars, and I actually just broke down and I was crying. And I was just like, "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." And we sat there in a blanket until past sunrise, and it was just
Holy crap, you were there for a while.
yeah, it was a couple hours. I think I might have nodded off a time or two, but it was just so pretty. And I was like, wow, damn, this is freeing.
Did you do any mountain biking up there?
I did. Actually, by Mount Bohemia.
Oh,
There
that's
was
cool.
a few
That's
trails
cool.
I picked out. I wanted to stay on one of the yurts, but I ended up not jumping in.
So I think the listeners need to know, like, Dex, his dog, was so cool that we would mountain bike in Michigan, and he would just let him run without a leash. He'd just stick right between whatever two bikes he was, and wouldn't bother any other riders. Would stick so close, and I don't know, that dog listened so dang well. So yeah, that was probably really cool doing all that with him.
That was incredible.
I'm wondering if you went to, was it High Rock Bay that you went to when you did the stars?
That sounds extremely familiar.
Really like the tip of the thumb.
Yeah, it was like the very tip.
Okay, that's awesome.
Because I was staying like pretty much right at the edge, but almost on the other side from, I don't know, the like Superior side. And it was just on the other side, like right at the peak, looking out north.
That's awesome. I think we snowmobiled there the one time we went.
When I tore my Achilles.
Oh yeah, you hurt yourself snowboarding, and then you still said, "I'm still going snowmobiling," and you like babied your foot the whole time, but still enjoyed it.
I wasn't gonna miss that.
That was another very fun trip. All right, yeah, keep going. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, that's all right. Shoot, after Copper Harbor, let's see, where did I go? There's that forest on the very east side of the Upper Peninsula, right before you hit Wisconsin. And I did a little bit of hiking in there. And then I stayed at a spot in Wisconsin. And man, it's really good for kayaking. It's right on the Lake Superior coast. I am blanking on the name, so I apologize, but any Wisconsinites probably know what this is. I met two girls there. This is gonna maybe come up later in the story. I was randomly sitting there, pretty douchily, just playing my guitar by myself, and these two girls were there camping, and they called me over, and we just kind of hung out for the rest of the night. That was that for then. But I got one of their numbers, and she happened to live in Twin Cities. And sure thing, when I got to Twin Cities, I ended up staying with her. She had a basement, and she let me crash there. So that was like two of my actual bed nights of the entire trip. So that was a clutch find. Great girl. She was a doctor.
Washed off all your stank.
Yeah. I was like, please don't smell me. And I'm like a week and a half deep now.
I remember we went on our trip, and we landed when we did our truck camping trip. We landed in California, and Chelsea had some friends that lived there, and we walked in their door. And they're like, "Can you please take your shoes off?" I was like, "I don't think you want us to take our shoes off." And we like barely said hi to them. Took a shower. All the water was like brown. It was gnarly. One of the best showers I've ever had.
Yeah, that's the most rewarding shower you're gonna get. That and they're like, I just have to go dip in this frigid river right now, and whatever, we'll make it work. Let's see, Minneapolis was actually my birthday. I forgot I was there over my birthday, and So it was nice to actually like have a person there to be with. So I hung out with some of her friends in that weekend. That was kind of nice. And then it was just kind of like shoot across America. So I want to say this is June 17th, 20th range. So I'm a couple weeks deep, and I just shot over to the Badlands of South Dakota. And the Badlands is gorgeous. I mean, South Dakota actually surprisingly has on the west side, has a very beautiful couple areas that are worth visiting. You do have to go through about 300 miles of signs for this one convenience store that is extremely disappointing. And it's like a damn billboard every mile or two, I swear, over hundreds of miles. It's ridiculous. Wall Drug. It's called Wall Drug. I should have bought a shirt because it's like their most proud possession there, I think. That being said, Badlands is gorgeous. I can't even begin to explain it. If you guys haven't seen it, go Google it right now. It's a very unique space. It's usually very dusty and very dry, but I actually happened to catch a storm and it turns into muck. It was just full mud while I was there. But it was cool when it was actually, I forgot about this campsite. So I found this campsite that was basically, so the Badlands are just an erosion off of like hills that are coming off of a mountain range on the west side. And it's just this erosion of many years. And so you basically, it's a grassy hill, and then it's just like all of this like dusty, crazy area that is the Badlands. I found a campsite, or lack thereof, but open land that I could camp on that hill. So I just was overlooking this entire space.
That's cool.
Which is really cool.
You're gonna start to get into national parks I haven't been to, but because I'm in the Midwest, I've been to these ones. I actually drove through the Badlands, but it was at night. And if you've ever driven through like an uneasy area at night, it's like really eerie. So I'm driving through, and if you don't know what the Badlands are, it's almost like I don't know. It's a bunch of like pillars, essentially, like these like weird mountains, real skinny mountains. And so I'm driving around, and I just see these shadows from my headlights, and like you got little steep cliffs off the side of your road, and it was so creepy. I was just like, get me to this campsite. I'm like tired. I'm gonna die. I don't know what's around me. It's like aliens. And then like the next day you see in the morning, you're like, oh, that's what I was driving through. What was I so afraid of? But like my mind at the time at night was just like playing mad tricks on me.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's absolutely nothing else out there. It's just these pillars and flat highlands.
So random, and then you leave and it's gone.
Yeah. From there, where did I go?
You're sitting there staring at photos, trying to remember, aren't you?
I know, yeah, we're working on things. There's a whole photo of 6 tortillas, 6 breakfast tacos. So I'm trying to remember what I was using those for. Mount Rushmore is in the Black Hills. That's what comes. Those are the hills that are coming on the west side of South Dakota. The hills are actually very gorgeous. I camped in there for a bit, did some biking. I must have done a big hike because I tend to make a bunch of tacos and just pack a bunch while I do a big hike. But I don't have pictures of the hike, which is funny. I remember trying to go to Mount Rushmore, and of course, Mount Rushmore, there was a huge line. And so I'm waiting in line for about an hour, and the clouds clear, and I could see them. And then I was like, check that box, and I drove right off. And I was like, yeah, that's good enough.
Were you allowed to let ducks into that? Like, did you have to just leave them in the car?
So national parks, the rule is you can have a dog on the leash like 100 feet from any parking lot. So basically, I didn't spend hardly any time in actual national parks unless I had a place to leave him or I knew the weather was good enough. And so I would kind of poke into most of the ones I went through and do the big sights and step out, take the picture. You know, the classic tourist stuff.
Yeah.
All my big hikes and adventures really were in kind of the national forests around it because there's not nearly as much rules around them.
I guess,
Yeah.
did that cause any, I mean, you can get into this later too, but like how was adapting to having the dog with you the whole time?
I mean, you know what I found was, especially in the summer, and I'm not talking about like Badlands, but like you think about Yosemite and Yellowstone and these huge ones. Unless you're in the very backcountry, it is not very fun to go through those national parks. I found, you know, it's just overcrowded. There's like huge tourist bus. Everybody's jumping off with their huge cameras. And, you know, you go out, take the same picture. And God forbid if there's an animal, everybody's stopping. It's just an annoying process. So I didn't really mind not being in the national forest or the national parks all that much. I found like what I really, you know, by this time I'm getting in pretty darn good shape. So I found like my favorite thing was go find the biggest peak and go try to climb it and spend the entire day just hiking with Dex and bring a bunch of
Which
good
doesn't
food.
mean much in the Midwest.
Yeah. It becomes relevant as you get to Montana.
You're
and
prepping.
the West. Yeah. Which is, oh, not yet. So Wyoming, I went to Devil's Tower, which is pretty way out there. It's very random. It was like even for me on my trek, it was, I want to say, a good 2-3 hours out of the way each direction. That being said, that thing is wild. Devil's Tower is worth a visit if you're ever around that area. I don't know who's around that area, but it's pretty cool. So then after that, I went to Wyoming, and in eastern Wyoming, there's I think it's called Bighorn Wilderness. It's actually a picture on the back of my wall now. Is where I took this. I have a pretty crazy story from there. So while I was camping, is the place I found an actual campground because I was getting tired of scrapping and smelling bad. And I was doing a cadence of about like every other day, every third day, I would do a big hike, and then I'd have to rest for a couple of days and I'd go find a lake to chill at and draw and whatever hippies do. And and I was chilling at the campground. Just I think I was taking a nap at one point, and something stirred me awake. It's middle of the day, probably 3 or so, whatever. And I get out. It's just me and Dax for taking a nap in there, and I get out of my camper, and I swear to God, like 15 feet away, there's a mama moose and her 2 cubs. And I had never encountered moose before, but you hear the horror stories. And they're just chilling, grazing. Okay, actually, let me step back. When I stepped out, they were probably a good 30, 40 feet away. They were a little bit away. So they're chilling, just eating grass. And
That's
I was
insane.
like, okay, I got to sit here and like watch. But of course, like, I don't want Dex to wake up and like make a noise because they might kill us. So I just kind of like shut the door, and I'm standing like right by my trailer, and I'm hyped. I'm like, adrenaline is pumping. I'm like, I know this mom would kill me in an instant if she sees me. And somewhere in this campground, some motherfucker with probably a 250 or 2500 Ram turns on his car, and it is just loud and spooks mom and her 2 cubs, and they come running right at me.
Oh my God.
I remember freaking out. Dex is starting to growl, and I was like, Dex, shut up, Dex, shut up. And they scoot. It's had to be 10, 15 feet away from me. I took a picture, actually, in the middle of it all. I took a picture, like slam. I'm like sitting with just a crack of my door open, just in case they come this direction. I can just pop in, close the door. But I was like, I can't really, I can't miss this. And so I got a picture of them running right by me. And that was one of the scariest, I think, encounters of the entire trip. But also majestic. I mean, in Wyoming, what I learned was in North America, there's 3 different breeds of moose, and where I was the smallest breed. And I swear this mom's head was at 11, 12 feet high. It was just massive. And I was like, oh my God, these things are majestic. So that was
just like, I don't know, I almost feel like I'm boasting because everything you're sharing is like just bringing up stories of my life. I'm 32 years old now, and we've done a handful of adventures. We just went to Alaska for a trip with the kids and got to see some moose there, and it's just like so hard to imagine how tall they are because you're seeing them off like a football field length away, maybe half that, and they're in the weeds, so like they're chopped off at the knees. I can't even imagine seeing them less than 30 feet away, how tall that might have been. It was probably over your trailer by like a long shot.
Oh, big time.
Oh, yeah.
I think I probably stood at her shoulder, and like those bodies are thick, and then they have a huge neck and a giant head above it.
That's really cool. That's really cool and like very close to nature.
Yeah, I was spooked. I was very spooked. I think it was that was one of those adrenaline rushes that lasts a couple hours. Like, okay.
Shut up, Dex, not now. And I bet, like, I'm surprised I didn't mention this to you at all, but like, you didn't probably have any weapons or anything out, like no bear mace, no like anything, did you?
No, I brought a big Bowie knife that I had, and then I didn't buy bear mace until Montana.
There you go.
Because that's when all the locals were like, "Hey, actually, though, this is bear country." I was like, "Okay, listening." Which is.
And you said that was at a campground? Is that you said it was a campground or like a BLM land?
It was at campground, but it was, and it's I think it was midweek. It was probably, it was a Tuesday. Thank you, Google Photos. Yeah, I was there. I'm like, midweek. There was no one there. I think it was one or two other campers in the entire campground. But also, like, I don't think this area is very well known. It was actually crazy because I was just driving up. My girlfriend lives in Billings, and we were driving up there from Denver. And you're driving up 25, and I look over to the left, and I was like, "Oh wait!" I was like, "That's Bighorn Wilderness." I was like, "That's the." I told my girlfriend, I was like, "That's the big 36 by 24 picture I have above my bed." And she was like, "There?" She was like, "I didn't even know anything was out there."
Nature.
Yeah, it's pretty neat out there.
So you went to Montana from there, or yeah.
Let me recollect for a second. Oh, I actually went to Jackson Hole from there. So kept on in the Wyoming area. My family actually came out and spent some time with me. That was my rest for the trip. I had my parents, and then like shortly after my brother, and so it was like 2 weeks of like actual beds, which was wild. So I was lying about my actual bedtime earlier, but I think that was the peak. Some good rest. That's when I learned that national forest may not be my favorite thing, because we spent a lot of time in the car, basically just going around national forest. But you see Yellowstone and the Tetons, and you're kind of like, oh, these are incredible places.
I have not been to either of those.
Worth the go. Worth going. I mean, if you go in the summer, just be prepared for a lot of crowds. But
I almost feel like that's what it is now. Period. Like after COVID, everyone is like outdoorsy now, and everything's crowded. Yeah. But that being said, like when we went to Pictured Rocks recently, it was not as popular as I thought it was going to be. The previous time was around COVID, and it was nuts. We camped in the woods on just state land because every campground in the world was packed up there.
Wow.
So
yeah, everybody like got hype, and then now they're selling all their outdoor gear because they're
yep.
coming back to life.
Scoop it up cheap.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm gonna probably skip the time with my family. They were great, but no crazy adventures. Yeah, you know, it was wholesome time.
Joey's got a low quality family. We don't talk about them.
I did when I dropped off my family. I spent a very notable time on actually.
What did they think of, like, your whole adventure? Like, what did I mean, I had my opinions. I was like very excited for you. I didn't like. What did everybody else think about you doing this?
My mom thought I had lost my damn mind. she was stressed the entire time. They made me buy a whole GPS tracker that didn't fucking work like at all. It was fucking garbage, but you know, at least it made them feel a little better. I turned on my Google shared, so a few people could track me in case, you know, I just like stopped moving for a while. But hey, you know, they have learned to just accept the things I do. So they're like, all right, whatever. At least you're going back to school. My mom's always, both of them are very supportive of anything. More degrees are always better in their minds. So they're like, well, at the end, you go back to get your master's, and we love that.
I'm sure every stranger thought it was cool. I feel like all of our friends in Detroit thought it was cool. But then again, like, I don't know, some of the people in Detroit are pretty homebodies. They love their city life.
Right. I think I was, you know, a lot of people thought it was cool, but like, nah, I wouldn't do that myself.
Good for you, not me.
Yeah. Let's see. So very notable space. On the other side of, I think it's called the Teton Valley, from Grand Teton National Park, is a very gorgeous area. And there's a lot of BLM land over there. I think it actually runs into a reservation at some point. And I was kind of sitting right on that boundary. I actually ended up staying about a week there because it was just so gorgeous. I was sitting on top of a hill, kind of overlooking the Tetons during sunset. You know, it was amazing. And kind of speaking of people on the road, so there was definitely a culture. And anytime it was during the week, you know, during the middle of the week when everybody else was gone, everybody that was out there you knew was on some sort of crazy trip. And so I specifically remember this spot was always busy, and I got to know all my neighbors. And there was like, I want to say 7 camping spots in the area that I stayed in for about a week. And the bottom spot had this big open kind of party hill that was perfect for everybody just to go rally during sunset. And I got to know all the neighbors, and we would just get drunk on this hill at night. And do some kumbaya. I had my drum with me, and it was the whole thing. That was a gorgeous spot. Also, some really good hikes out there. So anybody that is looking for some majesty, highly advised.
And you had no timeline on anything. Like, you just knew that you needed to get back within 3 months to start your. Did you have an apartment picked out? I don't remember.
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah. I can just live in the camper, you know, the trailer for another month if I have to.
That's exactly. I was saving that story for last, but yeah, it was literally just.
Oh well, let's not spoil it then.
Yeah, I was looking for a place while I was camping because I had no choice.
Oh, that's hilarious. Right. So, like, I guess you said that you stayed there for a week. That, like, you literally just found a spot that you loved, and you're just like, nope, I need a break. I'm tired of the road.
Yeah, it was
party neighbors.
It was kind of cool. It was just, if I liked a place, I'd stay there longer, and if I didn't, I would leave in about 2 days. I wasn't the type to do like an overnight.
Headphones are going out.
I think this side is still good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. Technical difficulties. But yeah,
It took us
no.
like a half an hour to start this podcast, so I expect some road bumps as we figure out this ordeal.
As we talk about road bumps on travel, actually, pretty perfect. But yeah, no timeline. I didn't want any sort of strict guidelines. The only thing is like I knew my parents were gonna be here this day, and I knew my brother was gonna come visit me a little bit afterwards. And I was like, well, I have this week. I love this spot, and so I just stuck around for a bit, and that's kind of how every spot was.
Did you drop the trailer off at all and go drive around?
Oh, every day.
Okay.
I think I ended up using. I never really told him though because I didn't want to know exactly the amount, but I think I ended up using somewhere in the lines of $7,000 in gas. It was I would go, I'd find a spot, and then I'd place my trailer, and every day I was driving around somewhere.
What mileage were you getting with the trailer?
Probably garbage.
Oh, you didn't have all the fancy meters, so you don't even know unless you calculated it.
Yeah, it was not good. It was not good. But that was that was like most of my costs. I was cooking everything. I had some really good meals. Like a great 2-burner stove, both my cast irons. I had a full spice rack as a whole thing. So
Joey was always the cook when he lived with us, so doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So I'd give myself one meal in every city that I would go to. But other than that, I was cooking every meal. So it wasn't, besides the gas, which was obviously expensive, it wasn't too bad. Let's see. From there, we go up to Montana. Let's see what we did here. And so I had a deadline. My brother was going to fly into Missoula, and he was going to come with me to Glacier National Park. But before that, I hung out in the forest south of Bozeman, kind of by Big Sky area, which is funny because I actually didn't even know Big Sky existed as like a snowboarding place, as like a resort. I didn't know any of this area. I just kind of saw it on the map, and I was like, this place looks gorgeous. And this is where I ended up buying bear mace, because I remember the first hike I ever did. It was like just a 2-mile jaunt, just straight uphill, so you could get to the peak and just overlook this area. I get to the top, and there's this old country boy who was young. I mean, he must have been like 18 or something, but he's just carrying the biggest 45 handgun I've ever seen. And I was like, holy shit, bro. I know this is Montana, but like, what are you doing? And then he explained the bear situation, and everyone around us was like, yeah, no, actually bears here. I was like, oh, okay, I'm ignorant. I've never been to Montana before. I've definitely never seen a grizzly before. So ended up buying some bear mace in that area. Gorgeous area, go check it out. Lots of beautiful.
Did you see any grizzly out there? I don't know if I've actually seen a grizzly bear.
I definitely did not see a grizzly, and I'm honestly very happy about that.
Yeah.
Like, would have been cool to note, but that's a little too.
You'll stick to your moose close encounter.
Yeah. The moose was big enough for me.
How did you like? You were talking about food a little bit. Like, I assume you got in a pretty good rhythm. You had a pretty nice cooler to make sure that you keep everything cold. Did you have 2 coolers?
About 2 coolers, but one of them was kind of just dry storage. Actually most of my spices lived in there. Anything that wasn't going to go bad. And then I had bought an Arctic for the real stuff. If there's one change I can recommend, I would have put just enough solar power in a small battery to run a little in-cooler chiller, so I didn't have to deal with all of the ice.
Yeah, because I know sometimes we've like ruined meals, not draining it enough. Meat, yeah, it's like waterlogging it.
Yep.
that's a whole thing in itself, especially because you were going in the summer.
Yeah. And that thing will do good for a couple days, depending on how I stored it and where I was staying. But it was still annoying to deal with water all the time.
Yeah.
But I got really good at cooking over fire, over my stove. I could make some pretty elaborate meals. I remember I did some slow cooked ribs that I think I did for like 6 hours once because I just
Over the
had the
fire?
time. Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
it was cool. I have a picture somewhere. It was my big Dutch oven cast iron with the ribs in it, and then another cast iron with I think we had a side of a bunch of potatoes and stuff that was mixed in.
You just lay it like right on the fire. I mean,
I
you
got
gotta go.
really,
We kind of boasted about your cooking, and like now you got to go into it a little bit.
I got really good at um, building out the like square build so that I would have a platform on top, or they call it the log cabin or something. So that when at least when it started, when it was like pretty fresh and nothing was like crumbling to pieces, I could just put my shit like right on top. And then as it's breaking down, you basically start moving coal pieces to the appropriate places. And so depending on how hot I wanted my cast iron, I was either putting it right on top of those coals, covering it with coals, or vice versa. I would kind of put it almost to the side and like bring the coals around. I had a lot of time to play around with this, so I got pretty good.
That's pretty cool. And like did you buy a full propane tank with the regulator so you could hook it up to your gas stove?
I did.
Okay. I couldn't
I
remember.
did. So I yeah, I got an attachment for my camping stove. It was a 2-burner Everest series. Those things are fire. Shout out. I got an adapter for the full big, propane tank, standard propane tanks, rather than trying to use the little small guys. Which actually, like, I think I only had to replace it once the entire trip, so that was a great way to do it. It's a little dangerous thinking back because, like, if I had gotten a wreck, it might have exploded. But yeah,
I mean, every camper ever carries their propane tanks on the outside of them. I think you're pretty safe.
That's true. That's true. So I guess next stop there was Missoula. Picked up my brother. It was July 4th weekend. And notable story there. Small but notable. Montana's full of reservations. It's got a huge indigenous tribe population, many tribes, huge indigenous population. And outside of Missoula, they have a July 4th shindig where it's half classic rodeo, American rodeo, and half classic Indian. I don't know what they call it. I'm sorry. And so you get one ticket and you get to go watch bull riding, and then you get to go watch like classic dances. And I bought some hand woven alpaca gear, and like it was tight. It was pretty fun to see those two cultures colliding in that area.
That's bizarre. Is it all within like walking distance of each other?
Oh, they're literally buttered up next to each other. So
my God.
You park in one parking lot. I mean, it's out in the field, so you park in a dirt parking lot, and then you go to the rodeo for a bit, and then you go to your Native American digs, and it was a party on both sides, and a good mixture of people on both sides, which was really fun.
That's cool.
And then
did your brother know he was coming? Like, was he meeting you there for that? You were with your brother, right?
Yep.
He just wanted to meet you for 4th of July, and it happened to be that location.
Yeah. So we had planned sometime during the trip. I was like, okay, I think I can actually estimate where I'm going to be. I was like, Glacier was always this like big goal in my mind because I had seen pictures of it, and I was like, this area looks so gorgeous. I was like, let me pick you up close to there. We'll go spend the July 4th week out there. And the funny thing about my brother is he's extremely not outdoorsy.
He lived in New York for a while, right?
No, San Francisco for 10 years.
Okay.
And the only time him and his girlfriend camp, it's very glamp. It's a yurt with electricity. They're like real showers. So it's like they've done that a handful of times and they don't count. So I threw them into the rough. I mean, we stayed at a yurt near Glacier, so it wasn't too rough. But I gotten
imagine you two snuggling on your twin yacht or
your
what do you call it, cot.
You got to do it. I taught him how to cook over a fire. I was like, look, man, let me show you. I'll treat you in the weird outdoorsy way that I'm living right now. I mean, Glacier. There's not much you can say about Glacier. Just go. I mean, if you can't imagine what it looks like. Go out there. There's one big, really famous hike that I think is about 11 miles. It gives you kind of the crest view of the entire park, or at least let's call it one side of the park. And it is just incredible. It was almost impossible because, of course, it's packed in the summer in July 4th. It was almost possible. You want to do it one way, which is you go to the very peak and then you take it, and it's about 4,000 elevation down. We couldn't get to the peak, so we did it in reverse, and it was about 4,000 elevation up and 11 miles. It was pretty rough. My brother he's a trooper. I mean, he was like running marathons at the time, so he was fine. But yeah, we really powered through. But you see some incredible views up there, and the crazy like glacier blue waters in some of the areas is iconic.
I've not been to Glacier, so I have no idea what to even expect there.
Highly advised. Highly advised. It's incredible.
Better than Yellowstone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But I haven't done anything in backcountry, so nobody judged me for that statement. Again, I had my dog, so I couldn't go do the big hikes because I hear in the backcountry Yellowstone is really cool.
I think my two favorite are Sequoia and Badlands, and I'll probably say that a lot on these shows, but like Sequoia was just, I don't know, blew my mind. And I know that people talk up. What's that?
Those trees.
Oh, not even the trees, man. Just like, I don't know. You're just like, I'm driving up there. Like, you're just like, I don't know. You're driving this cliffside and you just go up, 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 up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And then the trees were unreal, right at the top.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've heard a lot about Glacier, and I assume it just like is on par or knocks it out of the water.
It's up there. It's definitely up there with my favorites. I think my two favies are Glacier and Yosemite that I've seen. I haven't seen them all. All right. So after that, this is a long trip, so everyone.
How far are we in at this point?
Comfortable. Let's see. Sponsored by Google Photos. So that was July 4th week. I'm going to skip to kind of my next part of the trip. So it'll be the second week of July, on July 9th. Ish.
I feel like a month and a half.
Yeah. So we're a month and a half. I'm fully ugly, bearded, haven't trimmed at all. Have been showering. I shower every day. I was actually pretty good about it. Turns out those little black bags that you leave on top and you hope the sun is going to warm them up. No, don't work very well. So I took a lot of cold showers, but we got used to it by then.
That's good to know, because I've heard like we have a pop-up camper now. We have two young kids, and we used to do the tent camping, bought the pop-up because it was like the next level up. And there's no shower in there, but I've heard a lot of good things about the bag showers. And you're telling me that even in the summer it's pretty cold.
You know, it would get it to at best mediocre. You know, like it was like a little not freezing. That's like pretty nice when you're out on the road for a long time. But you know, hot shower every once in a while. Very quality thing. So my next area was I actually had two friends, two of my best friends from Houston randomly had moved to Sandpoint, Idaho, very northern point of Idaho. There's like Lake Ponderay up there, and his dad had purchased a home up on the mountains up there, and so I ended up staying some time with them. This is where the mama story comes in.
That's up to you, man. You have to tell that's now you have to.
Yeah, I mean, everybody said it. It's the best. This is the best story of the trip. So,
You're sure to judge Joey as a person after this.
yeah, please don't. Please don't. I think it was pretty. It was noble.
Noble.
So if we
Shout
go
out
to, so we go to. I got some creature comforts while I was there. It was a little bit of a bed. I think it was a couch, but it's close enough. And we go to a brewery festival on the water one of the days. And my friend worked at a bank, and his coworker's sister was a brand new mother of a baby of barely one, I want to say. And we kind of hit it off in the middle of, in the festival, and we're all leaving, and everybody's dissipating. And my two friends, well, at least one of them, were gone. I was like, all right, we got to take homeboy home. He's gone. And I get a call from this girl. And she's like, hey, you want to keep hanging out? I was like, yeah, why not? You know, I'm fine. And so, wife was, I won't name anybody here. Wife was sober. So she drove me to a very random gas station that we had agreed upon that she would pick me up on the south end of that. It gets very country very fast. And she was like, here, we're going to a party at my friend's place. They got a ranch, and and meet me at this gas station. They draw me off at this gas station. I'm like, all right, well, whatever. I get some snacks, you know, some beer. And sure thing, she comes popping in, her and her son. And they pick me up, and she drives me to this party, and we hang out on her friend's ranch for a while. And you know, it hits the time of the night where it's like, all right, is this gonna happen or not? And I just kind of really blatantly asked her, and she was like, oh, absolutely. However, I live with my parents, and so we can't go there. I was like, well, I'm staying on a couch with my friends, so we can't go there. So I was like, let's find a motel. So we go to the city, and I swear to God, we stopped at 5 different motels. Sandpoint is a very desirable holiday destination in the summer. And so none of them had space. However, there is a ski resort about 30 minutes up from the town, and I know there's lodging up there. I was like, all right, last ditch effort, like, let me call. And they had 1 room left. And I was like, put my name on it. And so we drive all the way up this windy road of 30 minutes to this resort. And we stop, and I was like, you gotta let me carry the baby in. And so I'm walking in with this baby.
Noble, as you said.
It's noble. It's noble.
Oh my God.
I thought it was funny in my drunk mind. Yeah, and we checked in. We act like we were, you know, a civilized family. And yeah, that
So
pretty
this
much
is
sums up that
really
story.
not a family podcast. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. No details. So that's northern Idaho. And I got swiftly out of there. Woke up with a really amazing view. You know, I had the whole like mountain view down over the lake. It was incredible, actually.
A little icing on the cake.
Yeah. Most expensive place I stayed, but there was a free robes, so treat yourself sometimes. So, from there, it was, let me just skip. It was basically a shot straight down to southern Utah. And first of all, if you're going to go to southern Utah, don't pick the back half of July to go to southern Utah. It is balls hot. It is insanely hot the entire time. However, I think my normal schedule would be basically I would wait until my camper was cool enough to sleep at like 1 a.m. and then I would wake up somewhere around 4 to go out and try to get activities done before I got 95 to 105 degrees by like 9-10 o'clock.
Yeah, your camper had one vent at top. I guess it had your screen. It was literally a box. Like, I'm sure that was unbearable.
It was.
Was it pretty tolerable up until this point? And like, how was Dex doing?
Surprisingly, the only thing I had actually run into was the opposite, where it was pretty cool in all the other areas. Because I stayed north the entire time until this part of the trip, and I think the worst was like there's a handful of nights I got into like the 30s, but I figured out a trick where I could take this giant cast iron and I would just turn a fire on it for as long as till it gets to peak heat, and then I would just stick it in my camper, close everything up, and that heat would usually get us through the night.
Dang, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you, mechanical engineering, I suppose.
There you go.
There we go. So let's see. I started on the west side with Zion. I was basically camping on BLM land that was not actually BLM land during that time. And I got driven up on in the middle of the night by this random dude on a four-wheeler, and he was super nice. Actually, he was like, "Hey, this is actually if you had kept going a mile or two, like you're on the BLM land, but this is actually like I own this." And I was like, "Dude, I'm so sorry. It's kind of it's midnight or something. I'm still waiting to try to go to sleep because it's hot as hell." And he was like, "Well, whatever. You want to come back to my house and hang out?"
No way. I'm honestly wondering if that was like, I went to Zion and we were camping out of our truck, and it was like this rutted out road. You went up this hill, and like I remember there being driveways everywhere, and I remember looking at the map and it being like, okay, you're on private property, but it says up ahead that it actually breaks off into BLM land. I'm kind of wondering if you might have been in the same area as us. But that was one of like the best campsites we had on our entire trip, because we were just overlooking the Zion. But anyways, he invites you up to his house.
Yeah, so I ended up going to his house. The dude's like cooking dinner. He fed me, and then he had a bottle of vodka or something. Turns out he was a lawyer from Vegas. I totally forgot.
So random.
Totally forgot about this story. And he was definitely gay. I think he invited me over because he was attracted to me. But I ended up really hanging out with the guy all for most of the night for a couple of hours.
Just soaking in his air conditioning.
Gave me a lot of alcohol. Fed me some baked beans, if I remember correctly. He had inherited it from his father, who passed away, and he was like, "I don't really know what to do with this." He's like clearly a city guy. He's like, "I just come out every once in a while and try to enjoy it." And I was like, "Well, yeah, that makes sense." He was attempting to grow trees, actually, like very water heavy trees in the middle of this land, which I wasn't going to tell him wasn't a good idea, but it happens. Anyway, Zion's incredible. Go visit Zion. I kind of skipped the rules, so I didn't realize that in the summer, which completely makes sense, you can't just drive into Zion with a dog, especially. You're supposed to take a bus, but that bus starts at 7. And like I said, I was waking up at like 5 to go do stuff before. And so I just drove right into Zion at 6 a.m.
Awesome.
with my dog.
That's the move.
It wasn't until, I didn't like go do any hikes because I knew like the general rules. I didn't want to break any of those, even though no one was around. But the general, it wasn't until I was kind of at the end where there's that like, the
water
through the
part.
canyon.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was just doing a little bit of it, whatever I felt was okay with my dog. And then I was coming back and the buses were starting to run. And then I started realizing like, oh, no one's parked in any of the like parking lot. And I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to be in here. But it worked out. I got to see a heck of a lot of Zion that I wouldn't have ever, because I can't even get on that. Can't even get in that area.
We went and we didn't know about the bus thing. We missed our chance to book it. We were on no schedule, so we didn't even know until we got there. And so we walked in after realizing we couldn't drive in. So we walked in, and I was jokingly hitchhiking, and these two girls picked us up. They had a special pass or something.
Perfect.
Found out they were from Michigan. I'm from Michigan. They drove us like halfway up, and then we ended up walking all the way to the spot you're talking about. The Narrows is what it was called.
Yeah.
And we knew we had to walk back, and we probably wouldn't get a ride back because it was only buses that far. So we just went as far as we possibly could through the Narrows before, making a decision to turn around so that we could hike the 4. It was either 2. I think it was 4 miles back to our car.
Far. Yeah.
Chelsea's piping in saying it was 7 miles. She knows what story I'm talking about.
There she is.
Oh my God. And like, it was all buses. Nobody picked us up. There was a guy that said like, hey, if you're here my next round, I will pick you up. And I don't know, we weren't.
Like,
so we got back to our campsite after dark. But definitely worth it. The Narrows were so cool. I wish we could have done the whole thing.
Yeah, I would gladly go back to Zion. Zion might be on the top 3 there. And I need to go back and go actually do some hikes without a dog, and without breaking rules this time, maybe.
Nope, I love that. That makes me so happy you found a loophole around the
It turns out you didn't hear it from me, but if you get there at 5:45 in the morning, there is no one at that guard gate, and you just drive right through.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, I get it, because if you didn't do that, then I bet that place would be annoying.
It's very dense as it is.
Yeah.
So there's just no way.
And I don't know if those buses sell out normally, but when we were doing our trip, it was during COVID, and it was crowded, and we were the ones that walked in. I think you can bike in too. We saw people doing that. That would have been smart, but we did not have our bike with us.
I definitely saw that. Although you got it, if you do it too late, it's already 100 degrees. It would still be pretty miserable. But at least the way back, you probably just stroll back nicely on your bike.
Downhill.
Yeah. I would like to mention, so I went to Bryce. You guys go to Bryce. I don't have any notable stories there. It's gorgeous, though. Grand Escalante National Park is sitting kind of in the middle of that area and Moab. And it is crazy. I mean, I think that was the only place in my entire trip that I felt like I could go on a hike and hurt myself, and no one would even find my bones for like years. Like, it's just massive, and there's ravines everywhere, and crazy beautiful, but like desolate. There's a good reason it was protected at the time. I think it's been kind of cut back, but gorgeous area. There's some beautiful, actually, waterfalls and small rivers going through. And so that was one of the areas I got to camp pretty close to a river, so I could go and just cool my body off in water. So I could sleep, which was amazing. Big fan. It was also the area I encountered a rattlesnake, which, being from Texas, I probably should have encountered a rattlesnake in my life before, but I haven't. They're not in the Houston area. They're out in West Texas. And this guy decided while I was chilling at my campsite, and this is BLM land, there's no one around me, but while I was chilling at my camper, this snake decided to come chill under my camper for the shade.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so I took Dex and I tied him up because he's like trying to get at this. And I was like, Dex, don't die on me. I need you, bro. And he just started screaming at this thing because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to like throw something at it and piss it off and it would come and get feisty with me. So I just started yelling at it. Didn't work. Turns out you gotta kind of just wait. Just kind of wait it out and sure thing. After some time, I don't know if he got hungry or whatever, but he moved on. That's the closest encounter I've ever had to a rattlesnake. It actually popped up without me noticing it, which I guess is the point. They're pretty well camouflaged, but it was like, again, like 20 feet from me, and I was just like, oh shit. And I just hopped away like a cute city boy that I am. There's also a area, I'm sure in Arizona, y'all might have seen the pictures of like the really wavy canyons, Antelope Canyon. Look it up if you haven't seen it. It's gorgeous. I haven't actually seen it in person. However, in Grand Escalante National Park, there are a few areas that have smaller versions of that. And it's basically just like sand-filled wind has just eroded this rock to where it's really smooth and like really sinusoidal, to use a really nerdy term. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. Very worth seeing. Let's see. Went on to Moab. Go to Moab. I don't have any crazy stories there. Arches.
Jeeping there, like, because Moab is just like a massive off-road park.
I did. So off of Canyonlands. Canyonlands, kind of the national park, is up on the top of a big part of the canyon, and you're overlooking the Canyonlands, and it's really pretty. But you can also take a drive down, and it just winds down the edge of this canyon, and then you drive past kind of a beautiful Horseshoe Bend river, and overall it's about a 3-hour drive, and you basically just end up back in Moab. I don't know what the drive is called, but very incredible. It was a cool experience. Incredibly gorgeous. Also, that rock is the stickiest rock. It's hard to explain, but if you're on a mountain bike, there's like angles that you never could climb anywhere else, but there you can, because that rock is like sandpaper. It's wild.
It was sticky. I heard stinky. I was like,
okay.
no,
not stinky. Sticky. Good for grip. And then it was Colorado. And I had Colorado, and we're talking right at the end of July. Got in a Telluride. Hung out in Telluride. I guess I do have one story up at Telluride. I went and camped a little in between Telluride and Ouray. There's a mountain called Mount Sneffels. And I might have picked it because of the name. Who knows? But know. The hike up to the top of Mount Sneffels has 3 really gorgeous blue lakes on the way up. That's really why I picked it. And so I hiked this whole thing one day, and this is like a 15-mile hike. I think it was close to 5,000 feet of elevation. Most people go up, camp, and then go summit, and then they pack up camp and bring it down, you know. But after 2 months on the road, I was kind of a machine, which was nice. So I could go and finish these things. I would just pack jars. What I'd do, you know, remember like the Smucker's peanut butter and jelly
Soda jars.
I'd make my own.
Usables.
And so yeah. And so I had like little mason jars for some reason, and I would just mix my own version of those. And then I'd bring I think for this one I brought a whole bunch of biscuits. Because who doesn't love biscuits? And went and did the whole hike. Took about 8-9 hours or something. Came back, and I took a nap. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna drive back. There's a town pretty close, and I was like, I'm gonna go drive back to town. I deserve a damn 6-pack. I want to drink some beer and just chill for the rest of the night. And at this point, I had gotten really comfortable with driving off road, and I loved to do a little fishtail while I was driving. And I did it, and I caught a rock on my sidewall, and I popped my only tire of the entire trip. Which, shout out to Goodyear Wranglers. Those are really well-known tires. We put those things through the goddamn ringer, and that was, you know, completely my fault. Go to change the tire, right? And
after an 8-hour hike and a 4,000 ascend and descend.
And you're getting mad, and like a 2-hour nap, and so I'm like groggy, and I'm like fucking exhausted, and I'm just sitting out there, and my jack was rusty. God damn it! I was like, all right, let me try this, and so I jack it all the way up, and I have big tires, they're 33s, and so you have to extend to the very top of a normal jack, and it just falls over and bends the entire jack. And I happened to be shirtless because it was pretty warm, and I was tired, and I was like, I'm not gonna sweat through another shirt right now. And so I wait for cars to come down this road, and there's this like cute family in a Civic or something coming down this road, and I'm just probably looking like a fucking brute, just dirty. Like I think I had a tire
iron in
my
hand.
hand.
In an hour or a month and a half.
Yeah, 2 months. 2 months is
2 months.
And I was just like, I need help. Sure thing, it worked. We made it. But when that guy, kind of a little dweeby dad, popped out, and I was just like, look, hey, I swear to God, I tried to be as like passive as I could, because I realized as soon as I saw his face, I was like, oh, I probably look like I'm gonna kill somebody. I was like, hey, I bent my jack. Can I just borrow a jack, please? I just want to change my tires so I can get home. And everything worked out just fine. But that face is not to be forgotten. It was pretty hilarious.
Can we take a picture? For a journal. Can I sketch you?
I wish I had that picture to share.
Oh my God.
And then I want to say, I got one last good part. So wind our way through the mountains. Obviously I stopped in a few places, the notable classics, Breckenridge area, and I was in Keystone for a bit. I did go to a Keystone Bluegrass Festival by myself. The ticket includes 5 hours of unlimited drinking from all the breweries, so I got absolutely smashed.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
How much was
it was like $60 or something back then. I don't know what it is now, but
70.
Yeah,
that's a steal. I think you robbed them.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely did. I drink a lot. I think I got adopted by a Mexican family. It was a whole thing. Very cool festival, worth going. But then, so when I get into the Boulder area, it's like, let's call it the first week of August. And keep in mind, I think it's August 18th is when I started school officially. And I didn't have a place to live. And so I as I did, there's a town called Netherland that's about 25 minutes up into the mountains from Boulder. It's a very beautiful town, very affluent if you just look at, what's being built now. And so naturally, as I do, I just found some BLM land around there, and I was just gonna go hang out while I found a place. The BLM land around Netherland is full of ex-convicts, the whole community. I remember pulling up and I'm like unpacking my trailer and like, they look a little scrappy, but whatever. I've been on the road forever. I don't really fucking care what people look like around me. But every conversation was their time in prison, and etc. And it turns out everyone that was around me that was just ex-convicts, and they were just living free off the land out there. And this is now I found out is kind of a common thing in that area. But I thought, whatever, we'll figure it out. And so I made some friends that day, just short talks. I didn't stick around for too long. But I talked to someone. I was like, okay, these people are kind of nice. Give them a chance. Whatever. I go to sleep, and about 3 a.m. Shoot, a couple 30 feet from me or something is another campsite, and I just wake up to some blood-curdling screams, and yeah, there's just some domestic violence going around, and
Oh my God.
Yeah. The girl was like accusing him of slamming her hand in the door, and he's accusing her of this and that, and it was just terrifying. So I'm up. I had my Bowie knife in my hand just in case. But I was like, look, I'm not gonna go be no damn hero. Stuck in my trailer. Eventually, after much throwing up, I could hear. I think they did fall asleep and shut the fuck up. Just like, what's funny is like people in the nearby camps, like we're all pretty packed in there, and the nearby camps are just like, shut the fuck up. Like this is just like a normal thing, and they're just annoyed. And I was freaking out, being the pretty city boy that I am. and
When
so,
you were like meeting people at these random campsites, were you actually going up to them and saying hi, or was it just like natural encounters, like, hey, setting up, I'm here?
yeah, a little of both. I mean, largely I'd be like setting up, and they're kind of chilling in their camp, and you just start kind of yelling across to each other. But yeah, at that point, I was, everybody on the road had been really nice and probably in a similar situation to me. So I was like innocent.
Here.
Yeah, I was like, hey, you guys are probably high, even though I've heard you talk about prison. So needless to say, I think I woke up at like 5, and I just packed up and left that area. Found myself a campsite, paid for an entire 2 weeks. I was like, I'm staying here until I find a spot because this is safe. And it was very nice. And I would go down to Boulder, get into a coffee shop, and scour the internet for leases until I finally found one about a week and a half later, I want to say.
Did you get to schedule, like, could you put the pod with all your stuff on hold, or was there a date and a location it was going to show up to?
The pod was just in like basically like month-to-month storage until I said, hey, tomorrow, you can schedule it. It was pretty great, actually. You could schedule it 24 hours in advance and just be like, hey, tomorrow I'm going to be at this spot. So it was like one night of me in that place, and then the pod arrived, and then I was moved in, and it was a very weird feeling because it was like I've been living in a camper for 2.5 months. Like I don't even know what life is like anymore.
And then after all this, because Michigan has so much salt and snow and everything, he sold his camper or his trailer for more than he bought it for.
Yep, I did recoup. I think I sold it for $2,500 more used in Colorado.
My God, you made that much on it?
Yeah,
that's remarkable.
Market here is just different. It's built different.
Yeah. No, that is a wild story. I did not hear all of this when we had talked about this in the past. So like, definitely some good ones in there. I'm excited to share this with Chelsea and see what she thinks, and hopefully everybody gets a kick out of it. I don't know, like we got to go into the Dex thing a little bit. But before that, like, I don't know, what do you think you changed it all during this whole trip? What did you come out of this with? And yeah.
Heavy question.
No, he did not change it all.
I didn't change one bit. No, the feeling of complete independence, complete freedom that I felt once I got comfortable. Like I said, I think it took about 3 weeks to get to where I was like in a routine and I felt comfortable with what I wanted to do. That was untouchable. And it's hard in day-to-day life to go search for that. But I find myself consistently searching for that. And it's not necessarily outdoors. It's not necessarily for like an environment. It's just that feeling of like complete independence of like, I wake up and it's whatever I want to do on this day.
Yeah, and it took you 3 weeks to do that. Like, I don't know, people chase stuff like that on a weekend, on a weeknight, a night. And I don't know, it's hard to engulf in that.
Yeah,
Did you have service through half of this? Like, did you have a hotspot or anything, or were you pretty much, subject to the elements?
I'd say most of the time on the road, I would catch it while I was driving. Generally in BLM land, no. But I didn't really want it. Yeah.
Right.
I had saved all my tunes, and I was just like, yeah, it's fine. I told my parents where I was every time I was there while I was driving.
I'm here-ish. Good luck. Find me.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, check Google Maps. It'll tell you my location. But yeah, I do want to reiterate. It took me 3 weeks, and I don't think I've ever been able to like feel that again. Honestly, I don't know if I will, but I'm like at peace with that. It was definitely an experience that you don't forget. High quality fun.
High quality fun.
And yeah, you just never let go of that kind of environment and that feeling.
Then you went back to the real life, found your apartment, you had your job. You had your college start date, finally shaved?
Yeah, I shaved almost immediately because I was like, oh my God, I look like shit when I looked in the mirror again.
Did you even have a mirror in your
No,
facing camera? You couldn't tell what you looked like.
Definitely not. The only mirrors I saw were in truck stop bathrooms. Not pleasant either direction of that side.
Oh my God. Yeah, I hate to. We don't want to end on this sad note, but like you gotta tell the Dex portion of it.
Absolutely. Dex was a special boy. God, he was fucking awesome. And we've touched a little bit on this. At this point, he was 8, and he's a lab pit bull mix, about 80 pounds. But just, I'll never have a dog like that again. He was just something special. He was so well trained, and so he respected me, and I respected him. And it was crazy to have a partner on a trip like that. And I actually don't think it would have been the same with even a partner, as a person, as what Dex was able to bring me in that trip. Shortly after that, he caught a crazy, wild neurodegenerative disease. And within 2 weeks of getting diagnosed, he passed away. But at this point, I'm 5 years deep, and all I can think of is that dog has seen more things than most people I know.
Most people, yeah.
He did it. I mean, he lived. We'd go on 15-mile hikes. We'd go on 15-mile bike rides. This boy would just be fucking living life. He loved it.
But yeah, this dog would do all that, and then he would just like sleep all day at home. He wasn't like hyper or anything. He was just like
Yeah.
chill as ever. And then you throw him into an event, and he's like, "Sure, I'll run a 15-mile bike ride next to you.
Yeah, why not?
Got some water."
I will always be looking for a dog like that again, but I still haven't been able to try.
Yeah.
Anyway, shout out to Dex. Last shout out of the podcast, I swear.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Well, I know.
I mean, is there anything else you wanna go on? This is kind of exactly what I wanted. I just wanted to hear about your how unprepared you were for this wicked travel event. I think it's super cool. I love the way you did it. I think you were insane for how unprepared you were, but I mean, you're never prepared for something like this. There's always gonna be something that gets thrown in your face, and that's the thing, right? You're signing up for the adventure. That's the high quality fun that we're trying to get at.
That's a high quality fun. I guess the last piece of wisdom is like, you're right. You're never going to be prepared for something like this. And it doesn't have to be some crazy travel. It could be a business. It could be something else. It could be getting married. You're never going to be prepared. And I think this gave me a pretty good insight into jumping off the cliff and learning to fly on the spot. And damn, it was good.
Love it. Yeah, I've kind of found that with a lot of things we've done, and with honestly with work, it's like just start. Don't talk something to death. Like,
Right.
have your idea, do as much as you can, just start. You'll figure it out.
Start recording a podcast.
Yeah.
Any today.
Joe Rogan.
Why
Like 9
not?
more episodes. No, this has been good, Joey. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Obviously, we haven't caught up in a while, so this is super fun for me. I don't know. I mean, you're doing some crazy city stuff. If you want to, plug yourself or share anything about yourself before we sign off, go for it.
Yeah, I guess why not? I'm a DJ now. I go under the hashtag or the @ DJ_ensueño, ENSUENO. It means in a dream in Spanish. In the Denver area. Look me up. We're throwing events, starting an entertainment company that we're trying to basically use all of the funding towards nonprofits, just because we don't really need the money. It's something that I'm doing for fun. That event, that's called Pin Dropped. That's PINDROPD, and that's an Instagram handle as well. Please look us up. Please give us a follow if you're in the area, or if you're not in the area and just curious what we're doing.
You're gonna get like 3 more followers after this.
Yeah. Woo!
All right, man. It was good talking to you.
Hey, man. It was a great time. I haven't reminisced on this trip in years, so